All right, welcome into the first ever Note News live stream. We're super excited to get this going. So today, after the first third of the season, the St. Louis Blues are 13, 13, and 2. They sit at fifth in the Central Division with 28 points. So we're going to be evaluating the Blues season by grading players and Blues personnel using a tiers system. We're going to answer who's done well, who's maybe underperforming, not doing so hot, and what can we expect for the remaining two-thirds of the season. We're going to talk about all that and more today on Note News. All right, we got that cool new intro video that we put together. Super excited to debut that. We wanted to wait till the live stream to get that going. So appreciate everyone for tuning in live. If you're new to Note News, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, and also follow and rate the podcast wherever you listen. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And we're also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. So you can check us out there where we post a lot of other great content. So we appreciate everyone that's followed along with us so far. And we're really excited to, get this next chapter of Note News going with live streams. Alec, how are you doing today, man?
Great. It's been a little bit of a busy weekend trying to get things all settled here, but yeah, I think the last couple Blues games, on the unfortunate loss last night at like 1 in the morning or something,
Yeah.
but not super fun there. But I mean, Monty's record and performance before then has been almost nothing short of stellar. So looking forward to getting this going.
Yeah, I am as well. So as I mentioned at the top, the Blues are 13, 13, and 2. They've got 28 points. They're sitting at fifth in the Central Division, and they're also 3 points behind the second wild card spot. So, like divisionally speaking, we knew it was going to be tough. So it's definitely disappointing, but I wouldn't say super surprising that the Blues are where they're at. But they're still sort of in it on the wild card, right? Only 3 points out of the second spot, which is held currently by the Calgary Flames. They've got 31 points. So, Alec, I got to ask you, overall, big picture, I think it's easy to get like lost in the ups and downs of the season because it really has been um, very up and down so far. But looking big picture, where the Blues are currently at after this first 28 games of the season, how are you feeling about this Blues team? How do you feel about the season so far?
I feel better than I thought I would going into the year, and I think I
Okay.
can say that confidently. As listeners know, I've had the Blues missing the playoffs this year, and I still kind of expect them to do. But I think they're giving it a better fight than I thought they would. I thought the West would be, well, the West has been incredibly competitive, but I thought they would be falling behind the competition, sort of like where the Kraken or some other stumbling teams are right now. And they're not. The Blues are right in the mix for a wild card. On the outside looking in for sure, but definitely looking a lot better than I expected. And so I'm overall impressed in what we said is an evaluation year. I think they're passing the test so far, and that's exciting to say.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, they're outperforming as of right now Utah Hockey Club, Nashville Predators, and the Chicago Blackhawks. I think it's a little um, surprising how bad Nashville has been, but for the rest of the Central, I think everyone is performing about as expected. Maybe also not including the Minnesota Wild, who are having a fantastic season. As disappointing as that is, they've got 40 points, but it is a tough division. But let's go ahead and get into uh, breaking down, sort of on an individual basis, how we're feeling about Blues players and personnel. We're going to talk about um, a lot of the main contributors that have been on the ice so far this season. We'll also talk about a couple specific Blues coaches because they've had more than one this season. It's one of those seasons, and maybe even a specific front office member. So I'll go ahead and get that pulled up here. We're going to be doing a tiers system today. So if anyone doesn't really know what that means, we're sort of giving like assigning a grade to different Blues players, like essentially assigning a grade to Blues players on a tier system from S to A to B, C, and D. So S is the best, and then obviously going down beyond that. So that's sort of how that works. If
S
anyone's
would
new
be
to
like
that,
a superior rating, and then
yeah,
everything
exactly.
else beyond that is sort of just like a regular grading system.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think it's sort of designed to not like rank players in order, but to put them into categories, which is a little easier to do with something like a sports team specifically. So, do you want to go in alphabetical order overall here, or start with players specifically, and maybe get to some other personnel later on?
Um, I think we can. Do you have a lean?
Let's go players first, and
Okay.
let's talk coaches and Dougie Dollars towards the end. Um, but I think for players, we should go alphabetical order, starting with Jordan Bennington, who not very long ago now broke the Blues franchise record for wins with 152. So super excited for Benner to get that. Alec, where do you rank Jordan Bennington? I mean, it's been a not it hasn't been as good a season, I don't think, as we expected or hoped we'd get from him. I mean, preseason, I boldly predicted that he would win the Vezina Trophy. It's not looking too good. Looking like a back-to-back year for Connor Hellebuck. But how do you how do you grade Jordan Bennington's season so far?
Yeah, we're really starting with the heavy hitters here.
Mm-hmm.
This, okay, also a question for you. Are we ranking them within the tiers, whereas like ones all the way to the left are better, and then you sort of descend
Sure.
that way?
Sure, we can do that a little bit,
Okay.
sort of feel that out. But I think another thing that I want to mention is that we're going to reach a consensus here. We're not going
Mhm.
to say agree to disagree, right? So we have to reach a consensus.
Right, right, right.
Yeah,
So I think I would make my case for the I know we've talked Bennington up a lot recently, especially with the Four Nations talk, which checked out that video if you haven't seen it yet. I think that I would put him at top of B. And my reasoning for that is that it honestly has been a little bit statistically of a difficult season for Bennington, and he's really had some exciting games coming on as of late. But if you look at the totality of his season so far, there was a lot of difficulty in the beginning, and sort of he was a big part of the Blues being where they are right now in kind of a difficult position, giving up some games that really we could have had and just had a poor performance. So I would say top of B, although I could hear a case for A. Obviously, as like a player for the franchise, I think he's an S tier player. But I think in terms of expectations and performance this season, Bennington should be a statistical top 15, maybe top 20 in like a what you would hope is a bad year goalie on in the NHL, and he just kind of hasn't been that so far. Now, can he turn it around? Yes, but that's where I stand right now.
it's interesting. I was actually leaning C for Jordan Bennington, which maybe
Hmm.
is too harsh. But I mean, sitting today with an 897 save percentage isn't exactly where I thought he'd be. He's got an he's got 8 wins and 10 losses. It has been a tough year for Benner, but I think overall, especially lately, he's sort of gotten it back on track. So we can put him in B for now, but I'm thinking maybe bottom of B is sort of where we would even out,
Okay, I
or
think we'll
middle
see
of B.
how the rest of B tier rolls out. I think C is a little bit much because there's been some wins that were mostly I can attribute to Bennington's play. And like you said, he's looking to be turning it around. So I would argue for B because I think when we look at more who rounds out C tier, there's going to be some players who really just haven't contributed a lot to Blues wins. And I don't think it's fair to say that Bennington hasn't contributed a lot to this team. It's sort of been kind of both the extremes, as it seems to be for him a lot of the time. But I
Yeah,
like B for Bennington.
for sure. And we're gonna do this periodically throughout the season, probably 2 more times, right? At the 2/3 mark, and then at the end of the season. So obviously, these rankings can change, and if anyone in the chat wants to let us know their thoughts on our grades or where you would put some of these players, please let us know. We'd love to hear it. All right, so Bennington and B for now. Let's move on to Zachary Bolduc, who has sort of come alive under Jim Montgomery, right? Had a sort of tricky start to the season. Took a while to really get going, to get to get on the score sheet anyway. But I think overall, like looking at his season, he's got 3 goals and 5 assists, so 8 points. It's sort of been a like fine season for Bolduc in my mind. He's sort of middle of the pack when it comes to like expected goals on the team and stuff like that. So I think for me, Bolduc is a C. But what do you think, Alec?
I was going to say C as well. I like you said, he's really come alive under under Montgomery, not Bannister, and really seems exciting for how he is going to play. But I think with Bolduc that before that point there was really nothing versus like Bennington kind of we're saying is starting to turn things around. Bennington had some good before that. Bolduc really hadn't really been contributing, but now sort of getting his game unlocked a little bit. Right now, he is 10th on the team in points, and 3 goals from a supposed sniper, bottom six winger is really not where you want him. So I like C for Bolduc.
For sure. Hopefully he'll keep this hot streak going here, right? I mean, I Montgomery told him to shoot the puck before his first game with him, so hopefully, and I mean, it paid off, right? He had 2 goals in that game, so hopefully it continues on. Cool. Well, let's move on to Philip Broberg, my sweet prince, who I'm gonna have a really hard time not putting in S tier. You might have to talk me down, but I mean, what do you think of Philip Broberg?
The only thing about S tier is just him missing time, which isn't his
Yeah.
fault, but
Hmm.
also if you just look at impact on the team, I think I'm okay throwing him in S tier, and if it works out that he just doesn't really fit with the rest of the company up there, but I kind of feel like he will, so I'm fine with S tier.
All right. Even as I say it, I'm like, is that too high? But I love him. I love him so much.
I mean,
And
when he's played on the ice, he's been a top three skater on the team all year,
exactly,
every game he's played in. So
for sure. Yeah, he went down and they went on that, rough stretch after that. I just wrote an article over at Bleed and Blue about how he could be utilized, how he could be deployed now that he's returned from injury under a new head coach. And I'm really expecting him to pick up right where he left off, which was a fantastic season so far. And if Montgomery listens to you, Alec, because I'm sure he's a Note News fan,
mhm.
hopefully he'll start deploying him on the first power play unit. That could be amazing.
That's my agenda will continue.
Getting
Despite
excited.
missing, like, despite playing in, for some of these guys, almost, let's see, quick math here. Okay, quick math isn't working. 12 games? I think 12. Anyways, missing about a month of time. He
Yeah,
is 8th on the team in points, 2nd in plus minus. I mean, this is like, he's a stud.
he's a stud. Yeah, he had that fantastic start to the season. Like for the first 6 games, had a point in each game and had yet to allow a goal against at 5-on-5. And so, yeah, just a stellar season from Broberg. Has fantastic skating ability, and he's utilizing it on both sides of the puck, and it's just been really cool to see. Let's move on to Pavel Buchnevich, one of the main players when you look at this Blues roster that you'd expect to contribute. And so far, he kind of has. He's got 7 goals, 10 assists for 17 points, tied for second on the team in points. But I want to hear your ranking of Buchnevich's season so far first.
So this is just so difficult because he played pretty much the entire season as a center. And the issue there is he was not playing well as a center, but he still has the production that's probably less good than what you want and expect out of him. You expect his numbers to be more in line with like Kairu's, and he really hasn't. But he had a much more difficult ask this season. The other thing is, you just gave him that massive extension, and relative to expectations, like you kind of expected more out of Buchnevich. So I don't know. I'm kind of leaning. B or C? I mean, he's like an A tier caliber player, but I just don't know that he's shown that. Is that entirely his fault for the team wanting him to try out as a center? No, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. I could be swayed, I think.
Yeah, I think I am leaning B. I think, like you said, he's struggled to perform like a center should, but like when he's been where he belongs on the wing, I think for the most part it's looked pretty good. And so I think his play at center has sort of brought him down maybe to B, whereas otherwise he could be like maybe I think you can make an argument for him being A tier, since he's been one of the the most important contributors for this Blues team points wise. But I think like overall, looking at both sides of his game, I don't think he's been like elite, but I think he's been one of the more solid contributors, especially for this Blues team. And so I think for that reason, I'm thinking probably B tier for me. I think B stands for Buchnevich and Bennington, and so um, I think that's where I'd put him. Do you wanna put B? Is that what you're thinking?
The only other part of this is Buchnevich is a guy who typically, though I guess the last couple of seasons had a little bit rougher in this department, but typically is pretty good about not causing penalties. But I guess if we say that his last couple of seasons he's been causing more penalties, and 7 penalty minutes so far isn't terrible, but it's more than you want him. I'm really waffling on this one. I think we can put him B for now, and I might want to see who else ends up in C tier, and I'll put an asterisk next to that to reevaluate later.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, we can shuffle some of these around. I'm gonna put him. It sounds like maybe under Bennington is what you're thinking.
Oh man,
Ahead of
yeah.
Bennington.
Let's just place him honestly.
All right, we can get really into the weeds here. So
hmm
let's
Let's get
let's
everyone
keep it
on the
moving.
board, or most people on the board.
Yeah. All right, so we got all the B names out of the way. There are a lot, and we jump straight to the F names with Radek Faxa, who
But
the
John, I
Blues.
think this is another B name because clearly this is a B tier player.
You think so?
I do.
I am going to hard disagree on that one.
Oof.
I think that Radek Faxa has found ways to contribute, like beyond just getting on the score sheet. I don't think it's fair to judge his value to this team just based on his points production so far, which has been pretty limited. He's played a lot of minutes, sure. He's been a really gritty player. I think that's like maybe like the main adjective you could use to describe Radek Faxa's game. Um, but I don't know. Like I was pretty high on him earlier in the season. Sort of some of his earlier contributions to this team, but I've soured on him a little. I think I don't know. I don't think he's quite playing so well. So I was leaning C tier honestly for Faxa.
The thing that I I really like about Radek Faxa this season is his defensive contribution has been like standout stellar as a forward, which we knew that he was a good forward for like defense coming into the season, but I really think it's been above and beyond mm, what I expected at least, and I think what a lot of people expected. I really think on those bottom lines, the to me, Faxa was always kind of the driver of the WTF line, the Walker, Torchenko, Faxa, partially as the center.
Hmm.
Even though I do love my Australian short king Nathan Walker, I don't think the WTF line gets talked about at all if it's Braden Shen at center or Dylan Holloway or Pavel Buchnevich. Honestly, like if it's anyone on this team other than Robert Thomas, I don't think the WTF line is producing at all. Truly, in my viewing of this player, I think he has elevated his line talent so much by his play this season. And the point against him that you're right, the production hasn't been there. But for Faxa, I don't necessarily think that's a problem. I think he's really been such a strong contributor in on defense in the defensive zone.
Hmm.
And I will say he is on. pace technically to have sort of a career year in this like late stage of his career. 7 points in 28 games for reference. Last season he had 19 points in 74 games. So we'll be around 20 points again. For a fourth line center, I think that's okay. And I guess the other thing is I'm thinking sort of relative to expectations here, but I guess if we're doing a tier list, it really is more objective than just expectations. So I guess I'm okay with C, but I've really been impressed by Faxa this year, which is why it just feels a little bad to put him in C. That being said, I guess I'm okay with it because of the nature of the tier list being more objective, like I said. But I just want
Yeah,
to shout him out.
for sure. Another point in his favor is he's been pretty good from the faceoff dot. He's got a faceoff percentage of 54 so far this season, and that's been really valuable. Winning puck battles. That was a big help for the Blues against Calgary the other night when they won in overtime. So he has found ways to contribute beyond just the score sheet. Let's put him in top of C for now, because I think comparing him with names like Bennington and Buchnevich, who we have in the B tier, I don't think he's quite there, to be honest. So we'll go ahead and
That's
stick him
understandable.
in C tier for now.
A
Moving on to
shout out
Justin
Radek
Falk.
Faxa.
Shout out Radek Faxa. He's been a great offseason addition for the Blues. Moving on to Justin Falk, our second defenseman of the episode here. It's been okay for Falk. Not stellar, but okay. He just missed some time, I believe, with an upper body injury, but he is back. Um, what do you think about Falk? I don't really know where to start with this guy.
I think that you probably start in D tier. Um,
Okay.
he has played almost the most games on the team, 26 games. I believe Blues have played 28 this season. So
Yeah.
missed a couple games, but he's playing 23 minutes a night, which is a lot. That's like arguably top pair minutes, maybe not that much. And he has 7 points to show for it for a player that is supposed to be more of an offensive contributor. We were really excited when he was on that hot streak with Broberg to start the season, and
Yeah.
so far playing back, I mean, they haven't even been playing together all the time, and yeah, I think Falk is a D tier for me. Really disappointing, especially given what he's being paid, what he's supposed to do, and still being given looks on the power play. That he's
I was
just
gonna say, I was gonna say, bringing up the power play, he's got like I believe 3 points after about an hour of like it's like more than 60 minutes of time at 5-on-4, and so like from a power play quarterback on your PP1 unit, right? That's not the kind of production you want. You want someone that's driving a little more offense, and he just hasn't done it. So I'm comfortable with Justin Falk in D tier.
I'm pretty firmly,
Let's do
yeah.
it. All right, we'll move on to our second and final goalie of the episode with Joel Hofer. He has had a decent season so far. He's played 8 games, and he's got a record of 5-3 so far. He's got a save percentage of 904. So it's been okay, I would say, and I think really where Joel Hofer has done best is when he has more consistent playing time, right? I think they showed this graphic during the Blues game in Montgomery's first game as head coach, where he started Joel Hofer in New York against the Rangers. Um, and when Joel Hofer has less rest, like somewhere close to 10 days of rest, um, his numbers like across the board are better. When that rest is more extended, closer to 20 days, he seems to get a little rusty and can't really keep up his production. So that's where he struggles. And I think, sort of to his credit, a lot of the issues that he's dealt with have been when he's been rested too long. A lot of that was coming when Bannister was still head coach. We'll get to Bannister later, but I think sort of putting that or thinking about that in Joel Hofer's defense. I'm leaning for Joel Hofer, like somewhere maybe B, B or C. What do you think?
think I'll start with Hofer on the season. The thing is that yeah, his deployment has just been so inconsistent.
Yeah.
Binnington is playing has started 21 games to Hofer's 8, so that's about a 3-to-1 ratio, which is pretty astoundingly high, especially for when you know you have a good tandem with a good backup. They're really, really running down Binnington, and I think it's showing. But you can't really hold it against Hofer to not be deployed in the way that we want. And in his looks, he has looked pretty good. I am for B. I think he's had even in his limited. He's only started 8 games though. I guess it's how do you weigh his like amount of impact on the team? He's 5-3 through 8 games. I don't know. I think he's played well when he's played. It's hard to say that he's had a ton of impact on this team,
Hmm.
but C feels too low. I don't
Go to
know
the
if he's
bottom of B.
on the same impact of like Pavel Buchnevich though, who's second in the team in points.
Yeah, I
Buchnevich has
think
been disappointing. I think I
you know
like B. I think I like B.
I think if we can put Broberg in S tier based on his his production, which has been more limited than a player like Buchnevich, then I think we can put Hofer in B as well, because I think his metrics for the most part have been on par on a per game percentage with Jordan Bennington, if not better in some instances. So I think he deserves B. Um, all right, Dylan Holloway, the other offer sheet boy, who has been kind of lighting it up lately. He's tied with Pavel Buchnevich for second on the team in points. He's got 9 goals, 8 assists, 17 points. Tied for the team lead in goals scored with Jordan Kyrou and Jake Neighbors. So I mean, he's really come alive. It seems like in the past couple of weeks. I'm leaning Dylan Holloway A tier. I think he's really outperformed his expectations preseason, which pretty much means he's living up to what they're paying him, right? Because we said they were overpaying both of these guys, but I feel like they're both kind of playing to what they're being paid. What do you think?
Yeah, I am with you that I think he's A tier pretty resolutely. He had a
Cool.
crazy hot start to the season, then tapered off, and now is sort of back to producing. And really, if like a slumping player, a player who's slumped for 2 3 weeks, is second on or first on your team in goals and second in points, that's not too bad. So he's
Hmm.
been pretty solid defensively too. So yeah, I'm perfectly with you that I think he deserves A tier.
And sort of like was the case with Buchnevich, a lot of where Dylan Holloway was struggling came when he was asked to play center in Robert Thomas's absence, right? So I think now that he's back where he belongs on the wing, he's really able to drive some offense and score some goals, like you said. So yeah, A tier for Holloway. I don't think that's much of an argument.
For
Let's move on to. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say for a middle six winger to be like this high in production on a team, I think that's really impressive, and you really like seeing that as a middle six winger. I also want to take really quick second to respond to Wendy in the chat that I think Snuggerud should also the expectation should be a middle six winger to be a player like Holloway, but that's we can save a larger conversation for that towards the end. But anyways,
Yeah. Yeah, we've had some great prospect episodes. If anyone's interested in hearing more about Snuggerud, Dalibor Dvorsky, one with Mike Meyer and one with Sam, whose Twitter handle is STL Analytics. If anyone enjoys either their prospect content, check out those episodes because those were a whole lot of fun to talk through the Blues prospect system with those guys. Let's talk about Matthew Kessel now, another young player on defense who hasn't really been. I feel like he's for the most part just been kind of a non-factor, if not sort of a minus overall for the Blues. But what do you think about Matthew Kessel?
yeah, Kessel just doesn't look like a finished product and
I
doesn't
feel
really
like
look like NHL ready.
yeah,
I think he's pretty easily D tier. He's got 3 points in
for sure.
24 games and is playing 13 minutes a night, which is low for a defenseman. I think that kind of tells you all you need to know. And even in those minutes, he's really not looking comfortable. So I think I think it's probably time for Kessel to get out of St. Louis for at least the remainder of this season.
Yeah, I agree. It's just like who takes his place, it's the only thing. So yeah, not a great season for Matthew Kessel. I don't think we need to litigate that one much more. But let's talk about Jordan Kyrou, who is sort of, I guess, maybe not far and away, but he is the points leader for the Blues. He's got 9 goals, 14 assists for 23 points. Um, really, he's on pace for a pretty solid season here. But what do you think about Jordan Kyrou's season so far? How would you rate him?
I think Cairo 9 goals, 23 points. I'm okay putting him in S tier.
Really?
I
All right.
think he's leading the team in production,
Mm-hmm.
and he has been a very pretty consistently stable player. There was a time where we were disappointed with him not taking enough shots, but even then he still found ways to get assists and do enough. And there have been games where he's absolutely taken over and
Mm-hmm.
almost played past the level of his contract. So for that reason, I think Kairu has been a pretty like resoundingly better player this season than Dylan Holloway, more on par with a Philip Broberg too if we're looking at the rest of the tier list. So
Yeah, I think that's
I think
fair.
Kyrie deserves like probably the bottom of S tier.
What I have really liked from Jordan Kyrou this season, what has been a little bit surprising to me, but definitely pleasantly so, is his uh, like the development of his game away from the puck. Right, he's a better contributor on defense, on the forecheck. He's sort of in the gutter, like grinding out puck battles, things like that, which you didn't always see from Kyrou in seasons past, and so I think he's becoming a much more mature player, a much more well-rounded player in ways that don't show up on like in goals or point production necessarily, but um, still a really solid player all around. He's sort of on pace to have kind of a similar season as last year, somewhere in the realm of um, like as of right now, a little bit less than 30 goals, unless he can um, have a hot stretch, which we know he's capable of. So hopefully he does unlock something, and maybe another coaching change will help with that. So we saw that happen last year, but
Or
yeah,
maybe playing with Robert Thomas.
maybe playing with Robert Thomas. I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel like he's been okay. Without, I know I was pushing that pretty hard preseason, but I've sort of liked his play and his
On the
deployment under
second line.
Montgomery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been all right. I think I predicted Jordan Kyrou to have a 40 goal season, so he's going to need to have a real hot stretch for that one to come true. But I'm still holding out hope for that one. So we'll see. Let's move on to Matthew Joseph, who the Blues brought in the offseason. And in 17 games, he's got a measly 2 goals and 2 assists for 4 points. Someone who I was more excited about preseason. I felt like he would be a solid middle six forward for the Blues, and by this point would be contributing a little more. But to be honest, I've been a little disappointed so far, thinking about Matthew Joseph. So, I mean, honestly, I'm leaning D tier for Matthew.
Unfortunately, I think I agree. And the thing is that I've really liked, there have been so many games where I'm watching and I'm impressed by Matthew Joseph's, what he's doing, either with the puck or more specifically, like playing defense. But 4 points is just really, really pitiful.
It is.
And I think for that reason that it has to be D tier. I guess
Yeah,
the conversation is Justin Falk above or below. I'm curious what you think there, but while I am still kind of a Matthew Joseph defender, it's getting harder to push that narrative.
it is. I'm putting him below Falk personally, just because of Falk's sort of defensive ability at the beginning of the season. I think if you take a look at these two guys, season overall, I think Falk had at least a better start, or a better stretch at the beginning, than Matthew Joseph has had. I think really at any point this season, if we're being honest. So hopefully he's able to get something going here, but I haven't really been impressed so far.
I'm okay with
Um,
that.
yeah, let's move on to his brother actually. Skipping skipping around a little bit here, but his brother Pio Joseph, obviously another offseason addition, playing as a defenseman, unlike his brother Matthew, who was a forward. Pio Joseph offensively has also been um, nothing really to write home about. He's got 2 assists and no goals. There was like a stretch there where I was really liking what I was seeing from Matthew Joseph. He was taking a lot of chances
Pio,
from, or yeah, sorry, from Pio Joseph. You're right. Um, it
Pio,
is it is tough
maybe
when you have two brothers who look literally almost identical. But I
it's like they're
think
related or something.
like they're related or something. Um, I think where was I? I think there was a stretch there where I was really liking what I was seeing. He was taking shots and taking chances from deeper in the zone, which you weren't seeing from this Blues team um, really at all. Like early in the season, and but I mean he hasn't really gotten it going, um, you know, points wise. But you really want someone to be taking chances from deep in the zone, create rebound opportunities, things like that. Um, but overall, I think Pio Joseph probably deserves a D as well.
Yeah, I'd put him D tier for the same reasons, like you said. Just production has been paltry, and I agree that there
Yeah,
were some times where he was looking better, but to me, I think above Kessel. I still think Pio Joseph has made more of an impact off the stat sheet.
sure.
I've just been so underwhelmed by Matthew Kessel.
Yeah. Um, all right. Well, let's move on to um, who do we got next? Let's move on to your boy, your one and only. Uh, uh, Alex got a fire alarm going off in his room, so I'll mute him for now, and I'll keep us going. So you love to see it on our first ever live stream, but Alec, we've got you muted for now. If you need to step out or follow follow fire safety protocols, I can keep us going for now. But um, we'll talk about Jake Neighbors here. I'll break down sort of uh, what he's contributed so far this season. First off, so he's in 28 games. He's got 9 goals, tied for the team lead, as I said, with Kyrou and Holloway. He's got where was it? 5 assists, so 14 points total for Jake Neighbors, and it's been a really fun season, I think, for Jake Neighbors overall. He was someone that preseason I was hoping would be. I was hoping would be, or I boldly predicted to be the Blues like All-Star representative. Had there been an All-Star game, there won't be. There's going to be the Four Nations face-off in lieu of the All-Star game this year. So check out our previous episode where we talked a little bit about that. Um, but overall, Jake Neighbors, I think he's had a pretty good season to date for his sort of sophomore season, his true sophomore season. He's someone that personally I'm putting in A tier. Um, it looks like Alec agrees with me. His fire alarm is still going off. Alec, if you need to leave, you should leave. But he's saying no. So we both agree. Jake Neighbors in A tier. So I'm gonna go ahead and put him there. I'm gonna put him below Holloway personally. I think Holloway's had a better season all around. And Alec is not able to disagree with me right now because he's muted. So so we'll leave it at there, and I'm gonna keep going here and until Alec's fire alarm turns off, and then we can maybe relitigate some of these. But for now, I'm gonna give my rankings, and we'll see what Alec thinks when that time comes. Um, Also, Seth, we see your comment in the chat asking if Braden Shen is not on here. Braden Shen is not on here. Being a total silly goose, did not make him a little box, but we will still talk about Braden Shen when we get to him. So um, next is Colton Parayko, my favorite veteran defenseman. Shout out Colton Parayko. Congrats to him for getting a Four Nations roster selection to represent Team Canada as a defenseman. That's one that we sort of broke down as something that we thought should happen. At least I did. And so I was really excited to see that from him. Colton Parayko is on track to have like the best season of his career offensively, honestly. He's cooled off a little, but overall is having a pretty good season. 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 points. He was tapped in on the power play as the quarterback for a little bit there and wasn't so effective. But overall, I think he is having a pretty solid season. I think his Four Nations, selection is an indication of that. And for that reason, I am giving Colton Pareko an A grade. Um, but Alec, let's hear what you have to say. Nothing. Oh, he's got he's holding up a piece of paper. Uh, I do not see that. Jake Neighbors, goal scorer. Uh, like Jake Neighbors, goal scorer. Dog. A tier. All right. Okay. Okay. I'm putting Colton Pareko in A tier, but I think he's probably below these two, just because his production really hasn't been on the same level offensively as the other two, as Holloway and Neighbors. Um, but I think that he's able to contribute as a defenseman as well. So I think on that side of the puck, what we're seeing from Colton Pareko is a really solid, well-rounded game, and I'm really excited about Philip Broberg playing on the top pair with Colton Pareko now. I think that's going to be fantastic. I think that really could be lightning in a bottle for this Blues team. If anyone's interested in hearing more about that, I wrote about it on my on Bleed and Blue, so go check that out. I sort of broke down why I think Broberg and Pareko could be a dynamite top defensive pair this season, and hopefully will be a critical part in getting this Blues team back in it. But we will see. Let's move on to Scott Perunovich, Scotty P, someone that has had quite literally an up and down season, or maybe more accurately, down and up. Scott Perunovich at this juncture, offensively, like stat wise, has 2 goals, 4 assists for 6 points. So not like blow you out of the water, not amazing. But I think when you understand sort of how long it took him to get on the score sheet in the first place, and then sort of how he has been performing over the past couple weeks, especially, I think Scott Perunovich has sort of elevated his stock, in my opinion. Um, and honestly, this may be maybe a little bit too high, but I'm thinking B tier for Scott Perunovich. I think I saw this heat map where offensively the Blues are getting a lot of scoring chances, and defensively, when Scott Perunovich is on the ice, he's helping prevent a lot of scoring chances. So I think he's having a fantastic season, and so I think that I'm going to put him in B tier, especially because Alec cannot disagree with me, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I am putting him at the bottom of B tier, to be clear. I don't think he's quite on the same level as a Buchnevich offensively, of course, and isn't quite on that par. But Peter, I see your question in the chat. Should the Blues try to keep Perunovich or go ahead and try and trade him while his stock is high? I think that's a pretty good question. That's not one that I've personally thought about a whole lot. But with where this Blues team is right now, Alex says trade. Alec wants to trade Scotty P. I think the Blues are in desperate need of a young defenseman that is legit, and if Scott Perunovich can be that, I don't think the Blues should be letting him go. Personally, he's someone that had a lot of pedigree coming into his Blues career and or coming into the NHL, right? The former Hobie Baker Award winner in college, and really has yet to sort of arrive in full. And it's been frustrating for sure. And I think it is tempting to see what could we get back from a guy with that pedigree. But honestly, I don't think a couple weeks of solid play have elevated his stock that much to other teams. Alex says if the Blues were to trade Scott Perunovich, probably getting some draft picks back in return, which, depending on what the package is, I might be for it. But I honestly don't think, like I said, a couple weeks of hot play have elevated his stock enough to make him worth trading. And if he can become like a legit, just like middle pair guy, a second pair guy, then I think it's worth holding on to him. Alec, Are you back?
Fire alarm, F tier. We don't even have an F tier. Z tier.
Z tier for the fire alarm.
It's
Alec,
my
you're back.
building. So everyone, I just want to be clear. I do follow fire safety protocol. My building sets off the entire alarm when other rooms have fires, and it was not in our room. It was on the other end on a different floor, and each room is also fireproof. So like,
All right. Well, we're glad you're back.
we've
We're glad you're
we've had
back.
the storm episode. Welcome to the fire episode, people. That's what you get for
Yeah.
a Note News live stream.
Yep. Unhinged as always. Well, let's revisit really quickly a couple of these guys. I put Neighbors below Holloway. Um, are you okay with that in the A tier?
Neighbors Below Holloway, yes, I agree. I think
Okay.
production is you have to.
Yeah, for sure. After Neighbors was Colton Pareko, right? I put him in A tier. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think definitely he is a former S tier player. Had we been doing news for years,
Yeah.
and is unfortunately I think no longer an S tier. But I like A tier, and I think I like where you put him, even for a low production season. He's still been Colton Pareko, so whenever he doesn't have the puck, he's like one of the best defensemen in the league, and that's still been the case. So I agree.
Absolutely. An elite puck mover. What about Scotty P? I put him bottom of B tier, sort of laid out the case for his sort of recent hot stretch before I started talking about the trade question. But where do you put Perunovic?
Pernovich is so interesting. This is the one that I was sort of thinking about in preparation for this episode the most. I just don't know what to do with this guy.
Yeah.
Like he's been, there was I think a month into the season we were saying that his time in St. Louis is done. He just didn't have it. Then he scored his first goal and exploded for like a week. And now I don't know. He's picked it up, but he also has 6 points for supposedly an offensive defenseman. His small size doesn't help him. Like definitely losing puck battles and just can't really like skate around guys. The other thing I guess is that he has 6 points to Faxa's seven, and so we're putting
Mm-hmm.
him on a line above Faxa. He's also played in less games, but he's also played in less games not because he's been injured, because they weren't playing him because he was playing
Yeah.
poor.
Yeah.
I think he's more of a C tier player for me. I think he's come on recently, so I would put him at the top of C tier. But I'm not like set in that. I think we can still have a discussion about it. But I think that saying Scott Perunovic has had the same effect to the season as Joe Hofer, who's had a very very strong, like a pretty good season so far, I guess. I think he's a C tier player.
Fine. We can put him top of C since you weren't there to make your case with the fire
If you
alarm
want to
going
talk
off.
me out of it,
I sort of laid out my case. I don't really have much more to say, but hopefully he can keep it up and move beyond that
yes,
tier for next time. So
promotion could be here next time.
for sure.
If we
All
know
right,
his career track record, maybe not, but hope knock on wood.
fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Let's talk about Brandon Saad next. Oh wait, one note about Scott Perunovic. I actually did have one more point to add. If you look at game score, right, this is sort of a stat that tracks production on both sides of the puck, right? How you impact the game from an individual offensive and defensive standpoint, but also how you impact team offense and defense, right? Um, if you look at game score acquired over the season, Scott Perunovic sits at third among defensemen after Colton Pareko, who at this point has a cumulative game score of 10.78. This can go up and down too. This is sort of like a cumulative stat that can go up and down. So Pareko has a 10.78, Broberg has a 7.9, Perunovic has a 7.13. So when he's had an impact, it's been pretty big in a limited time, just because he wasn't getting the playing time early on. Some injuries necessitated that he be played, and after a slow start, I think he's doing well. So that's my case. But
6 points though.
6 points, sure, we can put him in C for sure. All right, Brandon Saad. What do you think about Brandon Saad? I'm gonna let you take it for a minute because I feel like after that stretch of talking, I need a break here. What do you think?
um, Boy, I mean, what do you do about that? That's crazy. Sorry, guys. Okay, so Saad right now sits at ninth on the team in points. He has 4 goals, 6 assists for 10 points in 25 games, playing bottom 6 minute. 15 minutes a game. I would classify that as bottom six, but maybe you could say bottom nine, I guess, to be more fair. Um, Saad is so tough because in terms of like his value to the team, it's so high because you're paying him so little to pretty much score 15 to 20 goals a year, and it looks like he's gonna score 15 to 20 goals a year. But I just don't know. I think I'd have to put him C tier, probably, bel probably I guess above Faxa. I think
That's
Faxa has been really, really stout defensively, and their point productions are so similar. But Saad has outshone him, and more specifically, has scored goals. Assists are helpful, but we need goal scorers, and Saad was supposed to be one of them.
hmm
So, for that reason, I think I would, yeah, I think that's Red Slot.
I think I agree. That's probably pretty smack dab where he belongs. Really middle of the pack contributor. Not a lot to write home about, so I don't think there's much more to add on that point. Let's talk about Braden Shen next. The Blues captain. He is fifth on the team in points, tied for fifth with 14. He's got 4 goals, 10 assists. Um, what do you think about Braden Shen? This is a tough one for me.
Yeah, the Braden Shen conversation is always so tough because of his like position, being the captain, being paid what he is for so long. In that regard, he's been very disappointing. 14 points in 28 games at a -6 really isn't that bad, but good Lord, Jake Neighbors, 22 penalty minutes. Wow. Um, I think the other thing though is Shen having 13 penalty minutes of his own is really high. Um, I but he's been really good in overtime. I don't know. I think I put Shen top of C tier. I think I would put him above Perunovic, but he has been really disappointing. And
Oh, we lost Alec for a second there. Um, for the record, I agree. Braden Shen, probably top of C tier. Um, so we don't have a little graphic for him because, as I said, I forgot to do that one. So Braden Shen, top of C. I think I agree on that note. Um, Next up on the list, while we wait, while Alex technical difficulties continue, is Oscar Sundquist, someone who missed the beginning of the season but has come back and played 19 games. He's got 2 goals and 1 assist for 3 points. Sundquist, I don't think there's a whole lot to discuss here other than not like just sort of a non-factor. He I don't think there's much to say here, honestly. So I'm going to put him in D tier. That's where I'm putting Sonny. So honestly, I think bottom of D is probably where he belongs. I haven't been all too pleased with Oscar Sundquist's performance this season. So when Alec returns, we can see what he thinks. There he
It's
is. What do you think
back.
about Oscar Sundquist, Alec?
Is it back? Is it
It's
working?
back. I can hear you.
Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. This has been quite the day.
Well, of course,
Um,
this would happen on our first ever live stream, right? This
of
is
course.
this is vintage note news. This is very typical.
yeah, wouldn't expect anything else. Jeez. Um, repeat. Who am I responding?
Oscar Sundquist. I put him bottom of D because I really just haven't been all that impressed. What do
Yeah,
you think?
unfortunately, Sundquist probably shouldn't have gotten a contract, and fan favorite. I love the guy, but I think his time in the NHL is dwindling, and I'm not sure that he'll get another contract after this season. So,
Yeah.
um, although I still think he has had 3 points in 13 games to Kessel's 3 points in 24 games. I don't know. I guess they're kind of about the same though, because Sunquest has been not playing because he's not good. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Ryan Suter, someone who I think has surprised us, right? He's someone that I think. I mean, he hasn't performed. He hasn't contributed a whole lot offensively. Although 1 point and 5 assists for 6 points, I think is like pleasantly surprising for the most part. And he was really able to step up and play on the top defensive pair with Colton Parayko, which was really working out. Honestly, that was a formula that worked there for a while and um, was impressive to say the least. I think honestly, relative to preseason expectations for Ryan Suter, I'm leaning bottom of A tier. But what do you think?
Whoa. I strongly disagree with A tier.
Okay.
I also think part of the tier list being less relative, more objective, I think, putting him with his partner Pareko above like Bennington, Buchnevich, I was going to say like top of C, maybe an argument for B tier.
Okay, yeah, you're probably right. I got a little excited. I just think his relative to his preseason expectations, it's been
Absolutely. He's definitely shattered his expectations. But in terms of the impact of players on the team, putting him, I think, over Pavel Buchnevich and Joel Hofer,
yeah, you're right. You're right.
maybe
You're
there's
right.
a case for Joel Hofer. But
We can put him top of C then, do you think?
by the way, did we agree or did we place Shen top of C?
Um, I believe so. So I think I put Suter ahead of Shen.
I would agree. I'd put Suter ahead of Shen.
Okay, cool.
And we'll
Alexander,
edit this in the final graphic, I think.
sure. Yeah. Alexander Texier, brought in from the Columbus Blue Jackets, a move that we really, really liked at the time, but in 13 games, he's only got 1 goal and 2 assists. The production really hasn't showed up yet. He's looked pretty solid in overtime. The Blues are a pretty good overtime team. But, you know, an overtime specialist isn't like and if that's all you're getting from someone, then that's not a whole lot. Texier, I would probably put somewhere in D, but what do you think, Alec?
Unfortunately, D. I think under Falk above
Under Falk?
The
Sure.
Josephs. I
Yeah.
was so excited about Texier, and I really hope he can find something because I still see the flashes, but unfortunately, I think this has been the experience of watching Texier so far. I thought coming to a better situation, he'd be able to shine.
Yeah.
More so, it just looks like this is the player that he is, and it wasn't so much Columbus. It was just him as
Yeah.
a hockey player.
Yeah. All right, the big boy, Robert Thomas, the Blues
Like maybe
MVP
B
probably.
tier or
D. I was
yeah.
thinking like top of
Okay.
D. No, Robert
Yeah.
Thomas, probably the Blues' best player overall, an elite playmaker, one of the best in the NHL. Missed some significant time right with a fractured ankle. At this point, he's got 4 goals and 12 assists for 16 points. Um, Honestly, like to be fair, early in the season, like for the first the first few weeks, like we weren't really getting a whole lot from Robert Thomas, like points wise. So that was a little surprising, I think. But he has gotten it going a little bit. But he is also elite from the faceoff dot. He's got a 56.7 faceoff percentage. He's one of the best to do it. One of the best centers in the NHL, and someone that I think has to be like at the top of the list for Four Nations if someone gets injured between now and then. Like he's someone that you can plug in and really like what you get. So what do you think about Robert Thomas?
Yeah, you mentioned we weren't getting much, not much, but we're getting what we expected from him before the
Mm-hmm.
injury. Well, guess what happened after he came back after he was injured, after
Tell
he
me,
got hurt?
do it to me.
1.9, 1.9, 1.90, 1.90, 2.9, 3.9, 1.9.
Yeah,
Easy, casual. That's just,
yeah.
he's a stud. He's a guy. I think there's actually kind of a conversation as to if you put Broberg ahead of Thomas. I'm not really sure where I'm leaning there, but I mean, yeah, this is S tier. Come on now.
I'll put him below Broberg. Well, I don't know. This is tough. Honestly, like Robert Thomas, like for the first few games, he had a hot first few games. He cooled off a little bit, and then obviously missed a lot of time. Uh, but like you said, since he came back, he has been pretty solid.
3.9, no problem.
Yeah, yeah. A great point in the chat here from Keaton. The leadership aspect as well. Um, I like that. I like that for sure. I'll put him top of S tier.
I was going to make a case to put him above Broberg for they played the same amount of games. He's produced more. He matters more as a 1C than as a number one defenseman. He's elevated his forwards playing with them more. And
For
while
sure.
Broberg kind of has helped out everyone, like both the forwards and the defensemen that he's played, it's sort of to a lesser extent, I feel like, than
Sure.
Thomas. Also, just the feeling of when Broberg went down, we were like, man, that sucks. But this team can power through. When Thomas went down, people were clutching their purses a little bit more
Yeah.
tightly.
Yeah, for
So
sure. Yeah, I like that point a lot. I think he's been more valuable to this team overall than just his production. So, um, yeah, another great point from Peter in the chat. When he's out, like the center depth is just like when it has to shuffle up, right? In his absence, it doesn't look too pretty. So, I do think maybe top of S tier is probably the right spot. Let's close it out with a couple players that are a little bit more underwhelming before we talk about one GM and two head coaches. Starting with Alexei Toropchenko. Um, Alexei Toropchenko, point tracker. He's got 4 points. I think this is probably where he's been since the last time we checked in with Alexei Toropchenko's point production. 1 goal, 3 assists, D tier.
yep.
Do you think there was a stretch there where I think you could have made a case for a C tier, just because of the ways he was contributing, similar to Radek Faksa, right? But I think like even that has been a little underwhelming in recent play. Do you put him below Sonny, like at the bottom of D tier here?
I don't think so. I would put him.
Okay,
Well, that's been quite bad. But he's played more minutes, and I think his minutes haven't been atrocious. It's just not really producing. So I'd put him probably. Um, where's? Oh boy, I honestly would put him like above Tectier.
okay, yeah. Oh,
Because I
there we
mean,
go.
he's been asked to have a bigger responsibility, and
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, I'm
is
cool with
yeah
that
is a big part of that WTF line, that identity that they've been playing gritty. Even if he
for
isn't
sure.
producing, he's doing more than I think the guys below him.
Yeah, for sure. That has been a really important line. That fourth line playing against some of the best lines in the NHL on opposing teams and doing doing okay for the most part. Nathan Walker is the last name that we'll talk about player wise, and then we'll move on to some personnel. But he makes up the W of the WTF line. So where do you put your 5'8" Australian king?
5'9". He's
Five
five
nine.
nine.
Sorry.
Yeah, watch it. I love Nathan Walker. Probably I want to put him above Toropchenko. He's got one more point, but also he's scoring goals for the WTF line. He's got 3 goals,
I
which
was
is
gonna
most.
I was gonna say C tier,
Ooh, better than Falk.
better than Falk. I think. I just think he is like someone that's really like getting in people's faces um, and providing again like not in the same way, but just as Robert
Oh, he
Thomas's
brings the
value is
energy.
yeah like the energy provided, the sort of setting like the standard of like this is what we're about and here's what you can and can't do to our players and stuff like that and picking fights and stuff. It's been fun to see from Nathan Walker. He's an angry elf, but
Yeah, his statistics in the heart and
yeah,
expected
yeah,
spirit of the team. I like C
yeah.
tier. I would say bottom for
I would say
sure,
bottom
but
of C for sure.
I'm not gonna argue with you.
All right. Cool. So those are our player tiers. Let's talk about Doug Armstrong, Drew Bannister, and Jim Montgomery. Let's close out with Armstrong. So let's talk about Drew Bannister first. Obviously was let go not very long into the season, right? And results were mixed for the most part. We broke down what we really thought about Drew Bannister's season so far on the episode that we did when Jim Montgomery was hired. So we talked about both of these guys on that episode. Um, I think there's not a whole lot more you could have asked Drew Bannister to do with this roster, especially with Robert Thomas and Philip Broberg out, and then especially with as well with Jordan Bennington and Joel Hofer not playing up to some of their past norms and past standards. So I think that made things really tough for Drew Bannister. That being said, he also made some mistakes. Some of his lines, line changes, special teams, the way those aspects of the team were deployed and utilized, I think were a little bit questionable. And I think seeing the offense come alive with Jim Montgomery is a sign that it was there, right? The ability was there for this Blues team. Maybe it was a coaching issue. So was Drew Bannister that big a problem? But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think while he did get fired mid-season, which is not a ringing endorsement of a coach, and I think we kind of broke down his issues, like he said, this team wasn't like bottoming out. Definitely, he was not maximizing the talent on the roster, but for someone who didn't have a lot of coaching experience, I think that's to be expected. The other thing, so I guess in terms of tiers, I would place him. I don't think D is fair because I think the team was still doing okay, and while it did kind of feel like they were going to move on from him, it felt like more the reason it happened in season was because Montgomery became available, who was so
Yeah.
important to the Blues to acquire. And so I would put him sort of bottom of C range.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. So I'm comfortable with that for sure. Jim Montgomery, the new kid in town. The Blues lost for their first time in regulation last night against the Oilers. They fell 4-2. But so far, they're looking like a pretty solid team under Jim Montgomery. I was going to say A tier. The sample size is very limited so far. I think you can make a case for S tier, but I think if you consider sample size, it's tough to know, what this team will be exactly in the long term. So I was leaning A tier for Jim Montgomery. I think you could make a case for S tier, honestly, though. But what do you think?
You definitely could make a case for S tier. It has been really small, but it's been really, really good in the sample size. I guess in terms of how the impact on the team has been so far, though, objectively, you can't say that he's had the impact of Thomas Broberg and Kyrou. Honestly, objectively, I don't know that you can make the impact that he's had of some of these A tier guys, but it feels wrong to put him below A tier, so I think A tier is where I land also.
Okay. Yeah, I'm cool with that. I'm just going to put him at, that's the wrong guy. I'm just going to put him at the end here. Jim Montgomery in A tier. All right. The man himself, Dougie Dollars. I was going to say S tier for Doug Armstrong.
Where else do you go? I understand the issues people have with like the Falk contract, the Krug contract, and yes, Doug Armstrong is not a perfect GM. There are no perfect GMs. In terms of how he set up this roster this season, I don't think he could have done a better job. Like this team was on the verge of bottoming out in terms of where they were going because of, and yes, it was because of Doug Armstrong's mistakes, but now there's hope. And there's like an actual something to build off of here, not just to be a good team, but to be a great team. That has to be Armstrong.
So.
I think it has to be S tier.
I think so too. You just look at what his responsibilities were, right? Roster construction. He brought in Radek Faksa, who's been a solid contributor, bringing in players like the Joseph brothers, who maybe aren't doing so well. But I think have the potential to make a big impact on this team. But then the big ones being Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway, who have outperformed expectations, both of them. I was a little bit higher on them, but I don't think I expected this, right? I think that those two moves especially, and then the coaching hire.
I was going to say there's another big
moves.
one. You throw in that list now, and it's Jim Montgomery.
Throw in that list. I mean, you even look at the succession plan, right? Alexander Steen. Like this is because Doug Armstrong is a good GM that he is setting up this Blues team to perform about as well as can be expected with the way the roster is currently constructed.
5 years of Jim Montgomery.
Crazy.
I don't know that Steen would have done that or some other GM.
Yeah, not so sure. So that's our tier list. let us know if you think we've snubbed anyone. We're going to talk a little bit, just a little bit here at the end about what we're expecting for the remainder of the season. But here's what it looks like as of right now. Let us know if you agree or disagree with any of these here. But that's our tier list. Just switch it back over here. All right, Alec. It's been an eventful episode so far. Fire alarms,
Tell me about it.
technical difficulties, all kinds of stuff. Um, so I think we should close out. And before we do, I just want to give the plugs one last time. If you're new to Note News, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, and follow and rate the podcast wherever you listen, if it's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And we're also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod, where we post a lot of other cool stuff, updates, news, announcements, that kind of stuff. So if you like what we're providing, then we appreciate if you would help us and follow along. Those are really the best ways to support us. So we appreciate all that. Let's close out by looking ahead, right? I want to ask you, big picture, how are you feeling about the rest of the season? There's one question I want to respond to in the chat from Keaton, but before we get there, how are you feeling about the rest of the season, the remaining 2/3 overall?
I don't think expectations should have changed for the season. I think this should still be an evaluation season. I think we should be looking at what's coming into the future of Blues hockey and whilst evaluating the present. But I think that the expectations or the hopes for this team can be higher than they were before because of what we've seen so far. So in terms of what I'm expecting for the rest of the season, I'd like to see them finish above a 500 points percentage. But anything beyond that, I think, is bonus points. I think they're a really good hockey team. I think they're a good hockey team. Can become a really good hockey team, but probably not a great one. And that's why I still don't know that I would say expectations are playoffs, but evaluation should still be the number one thing for now Jim Montgomery's Blues. And I think we've seen a lot of good so far that's setting us up well.
Yeah. I agree. Good team, not a great one. I never had expectations that they would be like play or Stanley Cup contenders. I think I expected a little more in the standings at this point. But I really like the way they're playing under Jim Montgomery, and so I'm hoping they can keep that up over an extended period of time. Alec, yes or no, do they make the playoffs?
I think unless Bennington and Hofer really, really turn things around, I just don't think this team is there.
You don't think they're there? I'm holding out hope. I was like adamantly, maybe not adamantly. I had sort of given up before the coaching change, but seeing how they're playing under this new head coach, I'm really excited. I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say they do it. It's gonna have to be a wild card spot. Might not be pretty. It might come down to the wire, honestly, but I think they can do it, especially seeing the way they've played lately, beating good teams like the Rangers and the Devils and stuff like that. So fingers crossed. It's gonna take some luck. It's gonna take a continuation, right, a perpetuation of this solid play that we're seeing. But I hope so. I hope so. That's for sure. There's one question in the chat asking, which players do we think would be traded before the deadline? Alec, I'm curious to hear your thoughts here.
I'm assuming this means Blues players and not just general NHL players. And so to respond to it that way, I think it does kind of depend on how the rest of the season plays out. Because if they continue sort of with Montgomery on the pace that they are, which is very what I mean by that is Montgomery being, I believe, 3-1-1, 4-1-1, either way.
I think it's 3.
A very good record, very good points percentage, which means that their standings you would expect to improve a little bit. Then I actually think they probably keep the roster intact. What I think is more likely is that they're fired up right now playing under Montgomery, but then sort of will level out to, more of like a win 2 out of every 4 games type pace, depending on the given week. And if that's the case, I think we could see. I think Brandon Saad is a name that's been talked about a lot in trade talks. I think that makes sense. Shout out Peter earlier. I think Scott Perunovich would make sense if anyone's willing to take that on. Other than that, like what a contender would be looking for, I'm not really sure. I don't think
Yeah.
a goalie gets moved at a deadline. I think that would be an off-season move. I don't think Falk gets moved mid-season.
Yeah.
And I don't think a Shen contract gets moved mid-season. And also, he'd probably have to start producing a little bit more.
Hmm.
Maybe like I'm not really sure. Beyond that, I think it would pretty much just be like Saad or Perunovic, I think.
Yeah, I think you got to understand, like right or wrong, Doug Armstrong wants to make the playoffs. He is sick of not being in the playoffs. And if the Blues become a team that missed the playoffs again, I think it's going to drive him crazy. So I think he's really going to try. What I'm saying is, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of selling off, right? I don't think we're going to see a sale like you would see with a rebuilding team. They're pretty committed to not going full tank, and so for that reason, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of aggressive movement of players. Um, I think, yeah, like a Brandon Saad, maybe even a Radek Faxa, who is only on a contract for this season, is a UFA next season. So I think someone like him could be moved while his stock is a little bit high, just because of his, um, honestly, like a little bit surprising production so far this season. So he's someone that I think could be moved. No big names, like you said, probably not a goalie, and any young player with potential, I'm expecting them to hold on to for sure. Um, but beyond that, I mean, if they could get someone to take on the Justin Falk contract, I would like that. Nick
Not
Leddy is someone.
mid-season.
Nick Leddy is someone we have not seen in a while, and so I think it would be pretty tough to get someone to take him on. But
You'd have to find a pretty desperate trade partner, I think, for someone to accept Nick Leddy, just
yeah,
because his play this season has been really poor.
yeah,
But I don't think Nick Leddy is an awful idea. I think that would be the third player I would name, but I think it's
hmm,
pretty, I don't know, maybe like a 1 in 3 if
yeah,
this team is selling.
sure, yeah. It would take a pretty special like situation that you're trying to take advantage of on the other side, but it's tough to say for sure. Um, but overall, your plus minus of the season so far, what are you, plus or minus?
Plus,
I agree. It's been up and down, but I think it's been a fun one. I think the Blues are not an especially good team, like we said, but I think they're a fun team. When they win, it's a good time for the most part, but when they lose, it is very frustrating. So it's tough to say for sure, but I think I agree. Also a plus. Hopefully, they're able to keep this hot stretch going. I'm really looking forward to what the Blues are able to accomplish for the rest of the season. Um, but yeah, what's one game coming up, Alec, that you're excited about?
I mean, I think the next one will be, uh, I don't know. I think this Canadian road trip so far has been really telling for this team, and so they got a huge game coming up in Vancouver
Yep.
as well. I mean, Winter Classic because I'm gonna be there.
Yeah.
um, and just I love beating the Blackhawks so much it never gets old. I don't care that they're the worst team in the league. It never gets old.
Yep. I'm gonna say Dallas Stars. They're playing in Dallas on Saturday, December 14th. So big Central Division matchup. I am excited to see how this sort of new look Blues team, in terms of performance at least, measures up with like the brass of the Central Division. So that's what I'm looking forward to. So we're going to continue to cover all these games. We'll continue to cover Blues players and prospects at times, all kinds of stuff here on Note News. We're hoping to make these live streams a pretty regular part of what we do. There may be some occasions where we don't get to stream, but we'll still upload a pre-recorded episode. So, please bear with us as we sort of get accustomed to this new format. This was an eventful one, fire alarms and all. So we appreciate everyone for sticking through it, and good on you, Alec, for sticking through it as well. But it was fun. I had a good time. So we hope you'll tune in to the next live stream. See you next time on Note News, and as always, Let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.